If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniac. Hello everyone, hope you're all having a great day. My voice isn't completely normal yet, so sorry if I sound slightly different in this. I'm going to be making my own subreddit soon, so you can submit stories to me there. I should have it up and running next week, so look out for that. I hope you're all doing great and enjoy these videos. A couple of friends and I were coming home late from an afternoon/night hike a few weeks ago, and we decided to pull over near a rundown rest stop so my friends could use the bathroom and stretch our legs. It was maybe 8 PM. It's winter here, so pitch black. The area is just thick trees and bushland. There's no houses or campgrounds or anything around. I believe there used to be, but they moved the campground somewhere else because it's on the side of a mountain and it was too dangerous. As we're all getting into the car, I felt sort of uneasy. I didn't want to mention it because I didn't want my friends to make a big joke of it, but someone else woke up and said they felt uncomfortable too, and that we should get out of here. We all agree, and as soon as my friend starts the car, these lights flicker in the middle of the woods. We kind of stare at them for a moment. I want to say there was 7 of them, but 2 of them are higher than the others. The rest are below. They kind of bobbed like somebody was holding a torch, but they were way brighter. We started reversing out of the car park, the car still facing these lights, when suddenly they just sped up through the trees towards us. I don't know how to explain it. It looked like they were zooming towards us super fast. We were terrified and my friend just flung us to get out of there. I'd have just told myself it was people in the woods, except we were driving down the road at 60 kilometers per hour and we could see them trailing behind us, keeping pace in the trees. After a couple of seconds, they just disappeared and the rest of the way home was uneventful. We have absolutely no idea what it could have been. As far as I know, you can't get vehicles into that area since it's so overgrown and dangerous. No person could have kept up with the car either. Now, I'm no believer in aliens and UFOs, but if that's what it actually was, it wouldn't have surprised me. One night at around midnight a year ago, a man pulled into my driveway in an SUV. My driveway is quite large and loops around, and he parked with his headlights set to bright and pointed towards my front door. My front door was open with just a locked screen door between us. Since it was close to midnight, he parked so strangely. I grabbed one of my handguns before heading to the door to double check it's locked. I considered closing the actual door, but if they were to rob me, they already knew I was home. Plus, they could just be in need of assistance. I set my handgun next to the front door, close enough that I could grab it in less than a second out of view from the outside. A man stepped out of the SUV, which caused the interior lights to turn on, and through the bright lights I could just barely see he wasn't alone. The man approached my front door to greet me. I asked why he was in front of my home, and he said he was looking for a friend's house. I advised that he's not at the right place and that he should continue down the road to find the residential area he was probably looking for. He said he came from that direction and that he's looking for a friend's house. He had a smartphone in his hand, so I suggest he used it to call his friend for directions. He gives me an excuse about how his friend wouldn't answer, so I suggested he type in his friend's address in Google Maps and follow the directions to get there. He said he tried but couldn't work it. He said to me to come outside of my house at midnight to type in the address. I obviously refuse and say, look bud, it's almost midnight, I don't know you, and you're intent that I unlock my door and come outside to help you with a toddler's type of task. He responded, hey man, don't call the police, I'm a vet. I need some help. Please help me and come out now. Now I feel that I should state here that up to this point, the police had not been mentioned at all. So obviously, telling me not to call the police was obviously indicating it is on his mind. I put one hand on my gun before informing him that I would be calling the police and that he should leave before anything bad happens. He started to protest, but I pulled out the gun and slid the side of the barrel close to my actual door. I wanted to show him I was armed, but I didn't want to escalate things by pointing it to him. He fled when I called the police though, but nothing come of it. I thought that was the creepiest thing, that he didn't care about the gun, just the police. Now about 4 months go by and my neighbour had ran into a similar situation with a similar looking SUV and multiple men. Only, he was asleep when they showed up. A man rang his doorbell close to midnight. He got up. He opened his front door without really looking to see who was there. The moment he did, a man that had been standing to the side of the door out of sight pointed a shotgun to his head, walking him outside of his house. He sat there for hours with the shotgun aiming at him while they robbed him. They didn't shoot, but they did clean him out. He lost everything. They even got his PIN number and drove to test it while he's being held at gunpoint. I don't know for sure if they're the same people, but from the way he describes it, it seems like it was exactly the same people. I'm just glad I had a gun on me at the time. I was driving with some friends at around 2 AM on a rainy cold night along a winding section of road with a steep drop off to the river below on one side. We passed a small pull off and noticed a car with no lights on. It was parked in a weird place. We then capture a glimpse of someone next to it, and as the headlights hit him, we see his shirt is covered in blood all down the front. We don't stop, but turn around and drive back slowly. I roll my windows down as we approach, and he just stands there, blood covering him. The car looks okay though. Couldn't have been a crash. Out of the window I say, are you okay? And over the pouring rain and roar of the river below, I hear a distant and sorrow, I'm fine. And it gives me chills. I don't reply and slowly drive off as my buddy calls the cops. About half an hour later, we drive by again and there's an ambulance and couple of cruisers. Turns out the guy cut himself and was going to jump off into the river. Scary where your mind can take you. So last night, I was at a classmate's house working on a group project we have due tomorrow. I live in an apartment in town where a university is located, and my classmate lives at his parents' house, which is in the foothills just outside of town. In order to get to my house, you have to drive along a relatively secluded and narrow 2-lane road for about 5 or 6 miles. We started working on the project at about 6 PM and ended up having to drive around for a while after we finished our work. So I left the house pretty late at about 11 and started down the road back towards town. I didn't realise how tough it would be to navigate the road at night. There were no streetlights and the road was unkept and riddled with potholes. On top of this, I had no cell phone service, I had to drive very carefully to make sure I didn't blow out a tyre as I used my spare a couple of weeks back. I figure I was about 3 miles from the house when I rounded a tight corner and saw a pickup truck with a camper shell parked diagonally across the road. The manner in which it was parked completely impaired my path, and I couldn't drive around it because there was a gully on both sides of the road. The only way for me to get at this point was backwards, where there was a pull-off that I could use to turn my car around. At first I couldn't see the inside of the cab, but when I turned on my beam lights, I saw there was a man slouched over in the back seat. His head was resting against the steering wheel, as though he's been knocked out after a bad accident. I immediately sensed something is wrong by the way he just coincidentally came to rest in that position, totally blocking the road, being a red flag for me. I had heard some of the people playing dead in the road, doing so to lure people in so they can rob them. I decided nah, and elected to go back to my classmate's house and explain what's going on. I throw the car into reverse, keeping my eyes darting back and forth between the rear view and the truck. I looked and saw that I was almost on the pull-off where I could turn around. When I look back, however, my heart skips about 5 beats. The man who had been slouched over in the driver's seat was now walking to my car at a hurried pace, while a few other men jumped out of the camper shell and started moving towards it as well. I panic and accelerate backwards into the pull-off, which messed up the undercarriage of my car pretty bad. As I put it into drive, the guy was already at my passenger side window door, trying to get the handle, which thank God was locked. I was only able to catch a very brief glimpse of him, but his face appeared to be scabbed and leathery, definitely a meth head or some drug abuser. I sped away and didn't slow down at all until I reached the house, constantly checking my rear view to see if they were following. Thankfully they didn't tell me, and when I reached the house I explained what had happened and we called the police. I was grateful that my buddy's parents were understanding, letting me stay the night. They didn't find anyone on the road matching the description, but I filed an incident report and they told me they're on the lookout. But God, I'm even now still shook up over it. I kept getting the same adrenaline rush I got when I saw the guy charging me whenever I think about it. I had something creepy happen to me a few months ago. I was driving home after seeing a play with a friend of mine. So it's probably around 11:30 to 12 a.m. I live in a rural part of America, so there aren't any street lamps or houses for the majority of the drive. I was driving over the bridge and saw a car sitting on the side turned over. I wasn't really concerned about it, as it's a common spot for cars to pull over at, even if it was kind of late. As I pass the car, however, I look in my rear view and see that they're pulled out behind me again. I don't think much of it. That's until they began to tailgate me hard, which in itself isn't unheard of since the roads are very gravelly and you can have parts where you can lose control, but not like this. I kept driving for a bit with this car right up on me, which causes me to feel scared and frustrated. Then the car's headlights were put out abruptly while I was nearing the end of the road, which is completely surrounded by forests. This made me freak the hell out because it was still super close behind me. Now I can't see them. The car then sped up and went around me, but almost immediately slowed down to a standstill in front of me. At this point, I was so afraid, so I sped up, went around the car, and drove that way to get past them, speeding like I've never sped before. I rushed home and locked the door behind me. I filed a police report, but unfortunately nothing ever come of it, and as far as I'm aware, they're still out there.